The amber sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Silver Creek, as Zara Marshall clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders, feeling the weight of every stare, every whisper that followed her like a persistent shadow. "There she goes again, poor spinster girl," someone murmured just loud enough for her to hear, the words cutting deeper than the autumn chill of 1876. Zara kept her head high despite the burning in her cheeks. At 22, she was already considered a lost cause in this small Colorado mining town, too educated, too independent, and worst of all, too alone. The daughter of the town's former schoolteacher, she'd inherited both her mother's love of books and her stubborn pride. What she hadn't inherited was her mother's luck in love. Elizabeth Marshall had at least known the joy of marriage before consumption claimed her 5 years ago, leaving Zara to fend for herself. "Miss Marshall," the shrill voice of Widow Bellows rang out from the general store porch. "I was just telling Mrs. Porter how you might consider taking a position as her children's governess. A woman your age needs security, especially one without prospects." Zara forced a polite smile. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Bellows. I'm quite content with my position at the library." "Content, perhaps, but for how long? Libraries don't keep a woman warm at night," the widow replied with a knowing look that made the small crowd of ladies titter behind their gloved hands. It took every ounce of Zara's willpower not to run the remaining distance to the sanctuary of Silver Creek's modest library. The building, once a church before the new one was built, stood at the edge of town like Zara herself, not quite fitting in, but too valuable to discard entirely. Inside, the familiar smell of leather-bound books and dust welcomed her, and Zara exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. This was her domain, her escape from the pitying glances and not-so-subtle matchmaking attempts that had intensified since her 22nd birthday 3 months ago. "You're early," observed Mr. Whitman, the elderly librarian who had taken Zara under his wing after her mother's death. "Those gossips bothering you again?" Zara busied herself with organizing the returns. "Nothing I can't handle," the old man harumphed. "This town has too many opinions and not enough sense. You're worth 10 of those cackling hens." "Thank you, Mr. Whitman, but their words don't matter to me." The lie came easily after years of practice. "Then why are your hands shaking, child?" Zara stilled her trembling fingers, surprised to find tears threatening. Sometimes I wonder if they're right, if I'm foolish to think I can make my own way." Mr. Whitman's eyes softened. "Your mother raised you to think for yourself, not to bend to the will of small minds. This town is changing, the railroad's coming, new people arriving every month. Your time will come, Zara." Before she could respond, the library door swung open with a gust of wind, bringing with it a tall figure silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. Zara blinked, momentarily blinded by the light, and when her vision cleared, she found herself staring at a man unlike any she'd seen in Silver Creek before. He removed his hat, revealing hair the color of burnished copper, slightly too long and tousled from the wind. His face was tanned and weathered, but his eyes, a clear, striking blue, were alert and intelligent. Most notably, he carried a small boy of perhaps 4 or 5 years who was fast asleep against his broad shoulder. "Pardon the intrusion," the stranger said, his voice low and resonant. "The stagecoach said there might be accommodations in town, but everything seems full on account of some miners' meeting. The boy's exhausted, and I was hoping to find a quiet place to let him rest while I sort out our situation." Mr. Whitman stepped forward. "The library's open to all, sir. There's a comfortable chair by the fire where the little one can sleep." "Much obliged." The man strode to the indicated seat, his spurs jingling softly with each step. He settled the sleeping child with gentle hands, tucking his own coat around the boy before straightening to his full height. "Isaac Stanton," he introduced himself, extending a hand first to Mr. Whitman, then to Zara. "And that's my son, Thomas." When his hand closed around hers, Zara felt a strange flutter in her chest. His grip was firm but not crushing, calloused from work but somehow still careful. Zara Marshall. I assist Mr. Whitman here. A pleasure, Miss Marshall. His eyes lingered on hers a moment longer than propriety dictated, causing that flutter to intensify. What brings you to Silver Creek, Mr. Stanton? Mr. Whitman asked, breaking the moment. Isaac ran a hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. Looking for work, mainly. I've been offered a position managing the Cross T Ranch outside of town. Owners getting on in years need someone to take over the day-to-day, Tobias Cross. He's not an easy man to please, Mr. Whitman warned. Few good ones are. Isaac glanced back at his sleeping son. But the position comes with housing, fair wages, and a chance for Thomas to have some stability. We've been on the move too long. And the boy's mother. Mr. Whitman asked, earning a sharp look from Zara at the directness of the question. Isaac's expression remained neutral, but something shuddered behind his eyes. Gone, fever took her 2 years ago in Kansas. I'm sorry for your loss, Zara said softly. He nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy without inviting further discussion. If you could point me toward a place that might have a room available, I'd be grateful. Even a barn would do for tonight. Before Mr. Whitman could respond, Zara heard herself speaking. My mother's boarding house, my boarding house has a vacancy. It's not much, but it's clean and quiet. Both men looked at her with surprise, though for different reasons. Mr. Whitman, because Zara rarely invited strangers into her home, and Isaac likely because he hadn't expected such an offer from a young, unmarried woman. That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose, Isaac said carefully. It's not an imposition. It's business, Zara replied, more briskly than she intended. I maintain 2 rooms for boarders. The income supplements what I earn here. Mr. Whitman nodded, backing her story. Miss Marshall runs a respectable establishment. Her mother started it years ago, and Zara has maintained it admirably since her passing. Isaac studied her face, as if searching for some hidden motive. Finding none, he inclined his head. Then we accept your offer with gratitude, Miss Marshall. What's your rate? They settled on a fair price, and Isaac insisted on paying a week in advance. As they arranged the details, Zara caught Mr. Whitman's questioning gaze. She understood his concern. A single woman taking in a handsome widower and his son would certainly set tongues wagging. But something about Isaac Stanton's direct manner and the protective way he cared for his son had struck a chord in her. Besides, she thought with a private defiance, let them talk. They already mock me for being alone. What difference would one more rumor make? As the afternoon light faded, Zara closed the library early with Mr. Whitman's blessing. Isaac carried his still sleeping son, and they walked the short distance to Zara's modest 2-story house at the edge of town. It was my parents' home, she explained as she unlocked the front door. After father died in a mining accident, mother converted the upstairs into rooms for boarders to make ends meet. Isaac nodded, taking in the simple but well-maintained property. A practical solution. Your mother sounds like a resourceful woman. She was, Zara said, surprised by the absence of the usual pang that accompanied thoughts of her mother. The boarder's entrance is around the side, but since Thomas is asleep, we can go through the main house this time. The interior was neat and comfortable, if somewhat sparse. Zara led them up the narrow staircase to a room at the end of the hall. This one has an extra cot for the boy, she explained, lighting the lamp on the bedside table. Isaac laid Thomas gently on the larger bed. The child stirred but didn't wake, his small face peaceful in the warm lamplight. There's a washroom at the end of the hall. Breakfast is at 7, but I can leave something if you need to start earlier at the ranch. Zara lingered by the door, suddenly aware of the impropriety of being alone with this man in a bedroom, even with a sleeping child present. 7 is fine. Mr. Cross doesn't expect me until 9 tomorrow. Isaac unbuckled his gun belt and hung it carefully on the bedpost, out of Thomas's reach. The gesture spoke volumes about his priorities. I'll leave you to get settled then, Zara said, turning to go. Miss Marshall. His voice stopped her at the threshold. Thank you, not just for the room, but for your kindness when we're strangers to you. Something in his tone made her turn back. In the lamplight, the planes of his face seemed softer, more vulnerable. "We were all strangers once, Mr. Stanton. Silver Creek's not so different from anywhere else. Some good people, some not so good." "And which are you?" he asked, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I try to be among the good," she answered honestly, "though according to some in town, my greatest sin is independence." His smile deepened, reaching his eyes. "Then we may have something in common, Miss Marshall. Rest well." Zara closed the door behind her, heart beating a little faster than normal. It had been so long since she'd had a real conversation with a man who wasn't elderly Mr. Whitman, or trying to sell her something at the general store. Isaac Stanton spoke to her as an equal, with a directness she found refreshing after years of navigating the veiled criticisms and backhanded compliments of Silver Creek society. As she prepared a simple supper in her kitchen, Zara heard the floorboards creak overhead and the soft murmur of a deep voice, presumably Isaac speaking to his now awake son. The sounds of life in her too quiet house were strangely comforting. The next morning, Zara rose before dawn as was her habit. She was surprised to find Isaac already in the kitchen, attempting to start the stove without waking her. "Good morning," she said quietly, tying her robe more securely around her waist, suddenly conscious of her informal appearance. Isaac straightened, looking momentarily abashed. "I didn't mean to intrude. Thomas wakes with the sun and I thought to heat some water for washing. It's no intrusion, you're paying for kitchen privileges." Zara moved to the stove, demonstrating the proper way to light it. "Is Thomas still asleep?" "For the moment. The bed's softer than he's used to. We've been sleeping rough or in cheap hotels for a while now." There was no self-pity in his statement, just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement of their circumstances. As Zara prepared breakfast eggs, bacon, and biscuits left from the day before she found herself stealing glances at Isaac. In the morning light, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight silver at his temples that suggested he was perhaps in his early 30s. His movements were economical and confident, a man accustomed to taking care of himself and others. "What made you decide on Silver Creek?" she asked as she worked. Isaac leaned against the counter, cradling a cup of coffee. "Wasn't so much a decision as opportunity. I was working cattle drives between Texas and Kansas, but it's no life for raising a boy. A man I rode with mentioned Tobias Cross was looking for someone with ranch experience who could eventually take over. Said Cross has no family of his own and wants someone to continue what he's built." "And before the cattle drives," a shadow crossed his face. "War, then trying to find a place that felt like home afterward." Zara nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. Many men had returned from the Civil War changed, struggling to fit back into normal life. "And your wife? Was she from Kansas?" "Rebecca was a schoolteacher in a town where we wintered the herd, smart, stubborn, full of ideas about how the world should be." A fond smile softened his features. "Reminds me a bit of you, actually. She never cared much what others thought either." Before Zara could respond to this unexpected comparison, the patter of small feet announced Thomas's arrival. The boy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his copper hair so like his father's standing up in wild disarray. "Papa," he said uncertainly, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings and Zara's presence. Isaac crossed to his son in 2 long strides, swooping him up into his arms. "Morning, Deputy. This is Miss Marshall. She's letting us stay in her house while we get settled." Thomas regarded Zara with solemn blue eyes. "Do you have any books? Papa says we couldn't bring many because horses can't carry libraries." Zara laughed, charmed by the boy's directness. "As a matter of fact, I work at the library, and I have some books here too, ones I enjoyed when I was about your age." Thomas's eyes widened. "Can I see them, please?" "After breakfast," Isaac said firmly, setting the boy on a chair. "Mind your manners now." As they ate, Zara found herself drawn into Thomas's world of questions and observations. He wanted to know everything: why the spoons were silver, if she had ever seen a real Indian, whether she knew how to ride a horse. Isaac occasionally reined in his son's enthusiasm with a gentle word, but mostly he watched their interaction with an expression Zara couldn't quite decipher. After breakfast, true to her word, Zara showed Thomas her small collection of childhood books. He settled on the parlor rug with The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, entranced by the colorful illustrations. "You're good with him," Isaac observed quietly as they stood watching from the doorway. "He makes it easy. He's a wonderful child. He is that, but not everyone sees past the energy and endless questions." Isaac checked his pocket watch. "I should head out to meet Cross. Would it be an imposition to leave Thomas here? I'd rather not have him underfoot while I'm discussing business." Zara hesitated only briefly. "I don't mind, but I'm due at the library by 9. Could he come with you? He'd be in heaven surrounded by books, and I'd be back by noon." "Of course, Mr. Whitman won't mind." Relief washed over Isaac's features. "I'm in your debt, Miss Marshall." After Isaac departed for the Cross T Ranch, Zara helped Thomas wash up and change into clean clothes. The boy chattered happily about the adventures he and his father had shared, painting a picture of a life constantly in motion, sleeping under stars, riding in stagecoaches, meeting all manner of people. As they walked to the library, Thomas's small hand trustingly in hers, Zara couldn't help but notice the stares and whispers that followed them. By noon, the entire town would know that Zara Marshall was not only boarding a handsome stranger, but also caring for his child. Mrs. Bellows was sweeping her front porch as they passed. She froze mid-stroke, eyes widening at the sight of Zara and Thomas. "Good morning, Miss Marshall. I see you have company." "Good morning, Mrs. Bellows. This is Thomas Stanton. His father is meeting with Mr. Cross about the ranch manager position." Zara kept her tone light and continued walking, but she felt the older woman's eyes boring into her back. "Was that lady mad?" Thomas asked innocently once they were out of earshot. "No, just surprised." "People in small towns notice everything new. Papa says people who talk about others don't have enough interesting in their own lives," Thomas declared with the perfect certainty of childhood. Zara laughed, delighted by his perception. "Your papa sounds very wise." At the library, Mr. Whitman welcomed Thomas warmly, showing him a special corner with children's books and providing paper and pencils for drawing. The boy settled in happily, and Zara went about her duties, occasionally checking on him. Shortly after noon, the library door opened and Isaac entered, his expression weary but satisfied. "Miss Marshall, Mr. Whitman," he greeted them before being nearly bowled over by Thomas running to embrace him. "Papa, I read 2 whole books and Mr. Whitman showed me a map of the whole world." Isaac scooped up his son, genuine joy lighting his features. "Did he now? Sounds like you've had quite the morning." "How was your meeting?" Zara asked, noticing a smudge of dirt on his cheek and the fresh tear in his shirt sleeve. "Successful, if unconventional. Cross had me break a wild Mustang to prove I knew my way around horses." He grinned, a flash of boyish pride in his accomplishment. "I start tomorrow. The ranch house needs work, though Cross has been living in just 2 rooms of it since his housekeeper died. It'll be a few weeks before it's fit for Thomas. You're welcome to stay at the boarding house until then," Zara offered, ignoring Mr. Whitman's raised eyebrow. Isaac's expression turned serious. "I appreciate that, but I've already noticed the looks we got this morning. I won't have your reputation compromised on our account." Zara felt a flush of both embarrassment and defiance. "My reputation is already subject to speculation, Mr. Stanton. Being unmarried and independent is scandal enough in Silver Creek." "All the more reason not to add fuel to the fire," he countered. "I'll find alternative arrangements." Mr. Whitman cleared his throat. "If I might suggest a compromise, the old Miller cabin on the edge of town has been vacant since Jeremiah passed last winter. It's small but sound, and as the executor of his estate, I can arrange a short-term lease." Isaac considered this. "That would be ideal. Thank you." The matter settled, Isaac invited Zara to join them for lunch at the hotel restaurant as thanks for watching Thomas. Despite her concerns about being seen socially with him, Zara accepted. Something about Isaac Stanton made her want to challenge the town's narrow expectations. The hotel dining room fell quiet when they entered, conversations pausing as heads turned to observe the unexpected trio. Zara held her head high, though her cheeks burned under the scrutiny. "Why is everyone looking at us?" Thomas whispered loudly as they were seated. "Because you're the handsomest young man in town," Isaac replied smoothly, "and they're all jealous." Thomas giggled, and Zara felt a rush of gratitude for Isaac's handling of the situation. Throughout the meal, he maintained a respectful distance, careful to treat her with perfect propriety while keeping the conversation flowing easily. He spoke of his plans for the Cross T Ranch, his hopes of eventually buying land of his own, and his determination to give Thomas the stability he'd lacked in recent years. "What about you, Miss Marshall?" he asked as they finished their meal. "Do you plan to remain in Silver Creek indefinitely?" The question caught Zara off guard. Few people asked about her plans, assuming she would simply continue as she was until some miracle occurred to change her status. "I haven't thought much beyond the present," she admitted. "My mother always dreamed of visiting Boston or New York. She had relatives back east. Sometimes I think of making that journey for her." "You should," Isaac said with unexpected intensity. "Life's too short to let others dictate its boundaries." As they left the restaurant, Sheriff Daniels approached them, his expression grave. "Miss Marshall, might I have a word?" Isaac tensed beside her, but Zara placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Of course, Sheriff." The lawman led her a few steps away, though not far enough to prevent Isaac from overhearing. "I understand you've taken in boarders," he said without preamble. "Yes, as my mother did before me. A single man and his boy." His tone made it clear this was not a simple observation. "Mr. Stanton has secured employment with Tobias Cross and needed temporary accommodations." Zara kept her voice level despite her rising indignation. "Is there a law against operating a boarding house now?" The sheriff had the grace to look uncomfortable. "No law, Miss Marshall, but there are proprieties to consider. Mrs. Bellows and some other ladies have expressed concern." "Have they indeed?" Zara's voice cooled further. "Then you may assure Mrs. Bellows and her friends that Mr. Stanton will be moving to the Miller cabin as soon as Mr. Whitman can arrange it. Though I fail to see how my business arrangements concern anyone else in town." Sheriff Daniels sighed. "Just looking out for your welfare, Miss Marshall. Your mother was well respected and would be appalled at this intrusion," Zara finished for him. "Good day, Sheriff." She rejoined Isaac and Thomas, her cheeks flushed with anger. Isaac studied her face. "Trouble? Nothing worth discussing," she replied, forcing a smile for Thomas's benefit. "Shall we walk back? I promised to show Thomas how to make paper boats this afternoon." As they strolled through town, Isaac shortened his stride to match hers while Thomas ran ahead, fascinated by a stray dog. When the boy was out of earshot, Isaac spoke quietly. "I apologize for causing you difficulty. Perhaps it would be best if we moved to the hotel until the cabin is ready." "Don't be ridiculous. The hotel costs 3 times as much and you'll need every penny getting started at the ranch." Zara's pride stiffened her spine. "Besides, I refuse to let small-minded gossip dictate my actions." Isaac's gaze was admiring. "You remind me more of Rebecca with every conversation. She had that same steel in her soul. You loved her very much. It wasn't a question, with everything I had." His voice roughened. "Her death nearly broke me, if not for Thomas." "He saved you," Zara observed softly. "Every day." Isaac's eyes sought his son, who was now attempting to teach the stray dog to sit. "He deserves better than the life we've been living, constant movement, no place to call home, no motherly influence." The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep in Zara's heart. Before she could respond, Thomas came running back, the dog trotting at his heels. "Papa, can I keep him? He's all alone and hungry." Isaac knelt to eye level with his son. "We don't have a proper home ourselves yet, Deputy. Wouldn't be fair to the dog." Thomas's face fell, and Zara found herself saying, "He could stay in my yard until you're settled. I've been thinking of getting a dog for protection anyway." The boy's face lit up with hope, and Isaac gave her a look of such gratitude that Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest, unlike anything she'd experienced before. Over the next 2 weeks, as October deepened toward winter, a routine developed. Isaac rode out to the Cross T Ranch each morning before dawn and returned in the evenings, increasingly tired but satisfied with the progress he was making. Thomas split his time between accompanying Zara to the library and playing in her yard with the stray dog, now dubbed Sheriff for his protective nature. True to his word, Mr. Whitman arranged for Isaac to lease the Miller cabin, but repairs took longer than expected. A leaking roof and broken stove had to be fixed before the place was habitable, especially with winter approaching. Isaac spent his Sundays working on the cabin, often with Thomas helping in the way of small boys. To Zara's surprise, the town's initial gossip about her arrangement with the Stantons gradually gave way to a different sort of speculation. She began to notice knowing smiles when she and Thomas walked to the general store, and more than once she overheard whispers about how the Marshall girl finally found a prospect. It was Mrs. Porter who approached her directly one afternoon as Zara was selecting fabric for new curtains. "He's quite handsome, your Mr. Stanton," the woman said without preamble. "He's not my anything, Mrs. Porter, he's a boarder." "For now," the older woman replied with a wink. "But I've seen the way he looks at you when you're not watching. Mark my words, there'll be a wedding by Christmas." Zara nearly dropped the bolt of calico she was examining. "That's absurd. Mr. Stanton is still grieving his wife." Mrs. Porter patted her hand condescendingly. 2 years is a respectable mourning period, especially for a man with a young child. Besides, the boy clearly adores you." This, at least, Zara couldn't deny. Thomas had attached himself to her with the wholehearted devotion only children can muster. He brought her wildflowers, saved the best parts of his drawings for her, and recently had taken to calling her Miss Zara, in a tone that suggested she was something special and magical. His father, however, maintained a careful distance. Though unfailingly kind and respectful, Isaac never crossed the boundaries of their landlady-tenant relationship. He took his meals with her and Thomas, helped with household repairs, and engaged in pleasant conversation, but he never hinted at deeper feelings. Which was perfectly fine, Zara told herself firmly. She had no interest in becoming anyone's replacement wife or instant mother. Her independence was hard-won and precious to her. Yet she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when Isaac returned each evening, or the way her day seemed brighter when he smiled at something she said. Worse, she found herself taking extra care with her appearance in the mornings, and once had caught herself humming while preparing breakfast, something her mother used to do when her father was alive. On a particularly cold evening in early November, Isaac returned later than usual, his expression grim. Thomas had already been put to bed after waiting up as long as his small eyes would stay open. "Is everything all right?" Zara asked, setting aside her mending. Isaac removed his hat and coat, revealing clothes soaked through with sweat despite the chill. "Cross had a bad fall today. Doctor says he broke his hip. How terrible. Will he recover?" "Eventually, but he won't be able to oversee the ranch for months." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zara had come to recognize as a sign of his concern. "He's asked me to take full control, effective immediately, wants me to move into the main ranch house to keep an eye on things round the clock." "Oh." Zara was surprised by the hollowness that opened in her chest at this news. "That's a wonderful opportunity for you and Thomas." "It is," he agreed, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "The pay is better and the house is finally habitable." Cross even suggested I hire a housekeeper to help with Thomas while I'm working. "When will you go?" Zara asked, struggling to keep her voice neutral. "That's the thing." Isaac sat down heavily in the chair opposite her. "Cross wants us there tomorrow, but Thomas—" He sighed deeply. "He burst into tears when I told him. Says he doesn't want to leave you and Sheriff. I've never seen him so attached to anyone since his mother." Zara's heart ached for the boy. He'll adjust. Children are resilient, I know, but it made me realize something I've been avoiding. Isaac leaned forward, his blue eyes intent on hers. Zara, Miss Marshall, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest in your answer. Her pulse quickened at his use of her first name. Of course. These past weeks living here watching you with Thomas. I've begun to feel things I thought were buried with Rebecca. His voice grew rough with emotion. I know it's sudden and probably unwelcome, but I find myself wondering if there might be a future where you could consider, where we could. He broke off, frustration evident in his expression. I'm making a mess of this. What I'm trying to say is I care for you, Zara, more than I should as your boarder, more than I thought possible after losing Rebecca. Zara sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might shatter this moment. Isaac. You don't need to answer now, he said quickly. It's unfair of me to spring this on you, I just couldn't leave without telling you. Is that all you wanted to tell me? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. No. What I wanted to say was that I think I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me. The simple honesty of his confession stole Zara's breath. For years, she had armored herself against the town's judgment, convincing herself that she didn't need the connection others seemed to find so essential. Yet in a few short weeks, Isaac and Thomas had slipped past those defenses, showing her how empty her carefully constructed independence had become. It terrifies me too, she admitted softly. I've spent so long proving I don't need anyone that I almost convinced myself it was true. Hope kindled in Isaac's eyes. And now I find myself dreading tomorrow because this house will feel unbearably quiet without you and Thomas in it. Isaac reached across the space between them, his hand hovering just above hers, asking permission. Zara turned her palm upward, meeting his touch. His fingers were rough from work but gentle as they entwined with hers. Cross's offer comes with a condition, he said quietly. He wants someone who can carry on his legacy, make the ranch thrive for generations. He made it clear he expects me to settle down, build a family. I see. Zara wasn't sure what else to say. I told him I'd already found the woman I wanted to build that future with if she'd have me. Isaac's gaze never wavered from hers. I told him about you, Zara. About your intelligence, your kindness, your strength. What did he say? She whispered. He said I'd better not let you slip away, or he'd fire me for being the biggest fool in Colorado territory. A smile spread across Isaac's face, transforming it. Then he told me to bring you out to the ranch so he could meet the woman brave enough to take on a broken-down cowboy and his wild son. Zara laughed, tears springing to her eyes. I'm hardly brave, just stubborn. Brave, Isaac insisted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Brave enough to defy convention, to live on your own terms. The question is, are you brave enough to consider a new path? One that includes Thomas and me, the weight of the moment pressed on Zara. This wasn't just about feelings, it was about fundamentally changing the life she'd built. This is happening so fast. I know, we could wait, court properly if that's what you want. I just needed you to know where I stand before we move to the ranch. And if I'm not ready, if I need time, Isaac squeezed her hand gently, then I'll give you all the time you need. We could start with you visiting the ranch, getting to know the place. Thomas would be over the moon, and you could see if it's a life you could imagine sharing. The consideration in his offer touched Zara deeply. Here was a man who understood her need for independence, who wasn't asking her to surrender her identity but to expand it. I'd like that, she said finally. To visit to see if we could build something together. The relief and joy that washed over Isaac's face made him look years younger. Then that's where we'll begin. In the days that followed, Silver Creek buzzed with the news that Zara Marshall had been seen riding out to the Cross T Ranch on multiple occasions. When she walked through town, the whispers took on a different tone, no longer pitying but speculative, even envious. The same women who had mocked her solitude now smiled and nodded, as if they'd known all along that she was simply waiting for the right man. Zara found she didn't care about their approval or lack thereof. Her visits to the ranch quickly became the highlight of her week. Thomas would run to meet her carriage, bubbling with excitement to show her his new room or the foal that had been born or the fort he was building with scraps of wood. And then there was Isaac, who always greeted her with a warmth that made her feel both cherished and respected. Old Tobias Cross, confined to a wheelchair during his recovery, proved to be gruff but kind-hearted. "So you're the librarian," he said during their first meeting, eyeing her critically. "Got more spine than most men I know from what Stanton tells me." "I wouldn't know about that, Mr. Cross." "I simply live as I believe is right." The old rancher grunted approvingly. "Plain speaker too. Good. Can't abide mealy-mouthed women who can't say what they mean." As November deepened toward December, Zara found herself spending more time at the ranch than in town. Mr. Whitman encouraged her to reduce her hours at the library. "You found something special, child," he told her. "Don't let fear of change keep you from embracing it." One snowy evening, as Zara and Isaac sat on the ranch house porch watching Thomas play with Sheriff in the yard, Isaac broached the subject they'd been circling for weeks. "Christmas is coming," he observed, his breath visible in the cold air. Hum. Zara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Thomas has been making a list for Santa, mostly toy horses and books." Isaac paused, then added casually, "and a mother." Zara's heart skipped. "That's quite a request. He's an ambitious boy." Isaac turned to face her, taking her gloved hands in his. "Zara, these past weeks have been the happiest I've known since before the war. When I look at you with Thomas, I see the family I've always wanted for him, for us." "Isaac, let me finish, please." His eyes were earnest in the fading light. "I know you value your independence. I would never ask you to give up the parts of yourself that make you who you are. The library, your books, your opinions, they are all part of why I love you." The declaration, so simply stated, made Zara's breath catch. "But I'm asking if you might consider sharing your life with us, becoming Thomas's mother in truth and my wife." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. "This was my grandmother's. It's not fancy, but it has history, like us." Inside the box was a simple gold band set with a small but perfect sapphire. "It matches your eyes," Zara whispered. "That's what my grandfather said when he gave it to my grandmother." Isaac's voice was husky with emotion. "Zara Marshall, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? Of making our family complete?" In that moment, all Zara's carefully constructed justifications for solitude fell away. The truth was blindingly simple. She loved this man and his son with a depth that both terrified and exhilarated her. The independence she had guarded so fiercely seemed hollow compared to the richness of the life they could build together. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear despite the tears in her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you, Isaac Stanton." The kiss that followed was tender and reverent, a promise of all that was to come. It ended abruptly with a whoop of joy as Thomas, who had apparently been watching from nearby, launched himself at them both. "Does this mean you'll be my mama for real?" he asked Zara, his small face alight with hope. Zara gathered him into her arms, her heart so full it might burst. "If that's what you want, then yes. I would be honored to be your mother." "I told Papa you would say yes," Thomas declared with the supreme confidence of childhood. "I asked God every night to make you my mama." Isaac's laugh was filled with joy as he embraced them both. "Seems like your prayers were answered, Deputy." The news of their engagement spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. To Zara's surprise, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Even Mrs. Bellows, who had been among her harshest critics, stopped her on the street to offer congratulations. "I always knew you were just waiting for the right man," the widow said with a self-satisfied smile. "A woman needs a husband and family to be truly fulfilled." Rather than argue, Zara simply smiled. "I've found happiness, Mrs. Bellows. I hope everyone is fortunate enough to do the same, whether through marriage or other paths." The wedding was set for Christmas Eve, a date that delighted Thomas. "It's like getting two presents at once," he explained seriously to anyone who would listen. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, Zara divided her time between preparing for the wedding and settling her affairs in town. She would keep the house as rental property, providing a steady income separate from the ranch, a detail Isaac had insisted upon, understanding her need for financial independence. The day before the wedding, as Zara packed the last of her personal belongings to move to the ranch permanently, she came across her mother's journal. Opening it, she found an entry from shortly after her father's death. "I worry for Zara. She has built walls around her heart, determined never to feel the pain of loss again. But what she doesn't yet understand is that the price of never losing is never loving, and that is too high a cost for such a vibrant soul to pay. My greatest hope is that someday she will find someone worthy of the love she has locked away, someone who will cherish her mind as well as her heart." Tears blurred Zara's vision. Somehow, against all odds, her mother's hope had been realized. In Isaac, she had found not just love but respect and understanding. In Thomas, she had found the joy of nurturing a young mind. And in herself, she had found the courage to embrace connection without sacrificing her sense of self. The wedding was simple but beautiful, held in the newly decorated main room of the ranch house. Mr. Whitman gave Zara away, his eyes misty behind his spectacles. Thomas stood proudly beside his father, holding the rings on a small pillow with such concentration that several guests hid smiles behind their hands. When it came time for the vows, Isaac surprised Zara by speaking from the heart rather than repeating the traditional words. "Zara, when I came to Silver Creek, I was searching for stability for Thomas, not expecting to find healing for myself. You have given us both a home not just of walls and roof, but of acceptance and love. I promise to honor your independence while cherishing our connection, to respect your mind while adoring your heart, and to build with you a life as rich and deep as the love I feel for you." Zara, not to be outdone, responded with equal sincerity. "Isaac, you and Thomas found me when I thought I needed no one. You showed me that true strength lies not in standing alone but in choosing to stand together. I promise to be a faithful wife to you and a loving mother to Thomas, to face whatever comes with courage and grace, and to never take for granted the precious gift of the family we create together." There wasn't a dry eye in the house when they were pronounced husband and wife. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night, with even old Tobias Cross managing a dance from his wheelchair. Later, after Thomas had finally succumbed to sleep, exhausted by excitement, Isaac led Zara to their bedroom. The room had been transformed with fresh linens, candles, and vases of winter greenery. "Welcome home, Mrs. Stanton," he said softly, closing the door behind them. The tenderness of their first night together surpassed all of Zara's expectations. Isaac was a patient and considerate lover, guiding her through unfamiliar territory with gentle hands and whispered endearments. In his arms, Zara discovered a new kind of freedom, the liberty that comes from being fully known and completely accepted. As they lay together in the quiet aftermath, Isaac's fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "Happy," he murmured against her hair. "More than I knew was possible," she replied truthfully, nestling closer to his warmth. "I want you to know something," he said, his tone turning serious. "I will never try to make you into someone you're not. The library, your books, your independence, they're all part of who you are, and I love who you are." Zara raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "I know, that's why I fell in love with you. You don't want to change me, you want to walk beside me." His smile in the dim light was everything she could have wished for. "Always, Zara, always." Spring came early to the Cross T Ranch in 1877. The land awoke from winter's grip with an explosion of wildflowers and new growth. Thomas, now nearly 6 and eagerly anticipating starting school in the fall, spent his days exploring the ranch under the watchful eye of Sheriff, who had grown into a loyal and protective companion. Zara found her own rhythms in ranch life. 3 days a week, She still worked at the Silver Creek Library, having trained a young woman named Emily as her assistant. The remaining days she spent managing the household, keeping the ranch's books, and establishing a small school for the children of the ranch hands. Isaac thrived as ranch manager, implementing new breeding programs and expanding the operation under Tobias Cross's approving eye. The old man had recovered enough to move about with a cane, though he was content to leave the daily work to Isaac, whom he now referred to as the son I never had. One warm May morning, as Zara stood on the porch watching Thomas attempt to teach Sheriff a new trick, Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Stanton." Zara leaned back into his embrace, covering his hands with her own. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in a year. Last spring I was alone and convinced I preferred it that way." Isaac chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her back. "And now? Now I can't imagine a life without you and Thomas." She turned in his arms to face him. "I have something to tell you." The seriousness in her tone made him straighten, concern crossing his features. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," she assured him, taking his hand and placing it gently over her stomach. "But in about 7 months, we're going to need to make room for one more." Isaac's expression transformed from confusion to wonder in an instant. "A baby, you're certain, Doctor?" "Williams confirmed it yesterday." Zara bit her lip, suddenly nervous. "Are you pleased?" In answer, Isaac lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle as he whooped with joy. The commotion brought Thomas running, Sheriff barking excitedly at his heels. "What's happening? Why is Papa yelling?" the boy demanded, eyes wide. Isaac set Zara gently back on her feet, keeping one arm firmly around her waist. "Your mama has some news, Deputy. Big news." Zara knelt to Thomas's level, taking his small hands in hers. "How would you feel about being a big brother?" Thomas's face scrunched in concentration. "Like Billy Miller, he has a baby sister." "Yes, like that. Papa and I are going to have a baby and you'll be the big brother." For a moment, Thomas was quiet, processing this information. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Will the baby like books and horses?" "I'm sure the baby will love books," Zara assured him. "And with you and Papa to teach them, they'll definitely love horses." "Then it's okay," Thomas decided magnanimously. "Can I tell Sheriff and Grandpa Cross?" "You can tell everyone," Isaac laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "But maybe let's tell Grandpa Cross together after lunch." As Thomas raced off with Sheriff to plan for his new role as big brother, Isaac pulled Zara close again. "Are you happy about this?" he asked softly. "It's happening faster than we planned." Zara looked up at the man who had transformed her life, her heart full to bursting. "I've never been happier. A year ago, the town mocked me for being alone. Now I have a husband who loves me for exactly who I am, a son who fills my days with joy, and a baby on the way. How could I be anything but grateful?" Isaac's kiss was tender, a promise renewed. "I love you, Zara Stanton. Thank you for taking a chance on us." "Best decision I ever made," she whispered against his lips. As they stood together on the porch of their home, watching Thomas run through fields of spring flowers with Sheriff bounding at his side, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world. Not as the solitary figure she had once been, defending her independence against a disapproving town, but as the center of a family built on love, respect, and mutual support. The mocking whispers of Silver Creek had faded into irrelevance, replaced by the laughter of her son, the love of her husband, and the promise of new life growing within her. This was the true independence she had always sought, the freedom to choose her own happiness, to build a life authentic to her values, and to love without reservation. And as Isaac's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of true partners, Zara silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought a weary cowboy and his son to her library door on that autumn day that now seemed a lifetime ago. In the years that followed, the Stanton family flourished. The baby, a daughter they named Elizabeth Rebecca after both their mothers, was born on a snowy December night, with Thomas standing guard outside the bedroom door, refusing to leave his post until he could meet his sister. 2 more children would join the family: James Tobias, born in the spring of 1879, and Sarah Grace, who arrived in the summer of 1882. The Cross T Ranch prospered under Isaac's management, eventually becoming the Stanton Ranch when Tobias Cross, in his final act before passing peacefully in his sleep, signed the property over to the family he had come to love as his own. Zara never gave up her work at the library, though as the years passed, she reduced her hours to focus on educating her children and the growing number of others who lived on or near the ranch. The small schoolhouse Isaac built for her became known throughout the county for its progressive curriculum and Zara's insistence that girls receive the same education as boys. The town that had once whispered behind her back came to regard Zara Stanton with respect bordering on reverence. Young women sought her advice on everything from books to business to matters of the heart. She never forgot what it felt like to be judged for choosing her own path, and she made it her mission to support others who dared to defy convention. Isaac remained her steadfast partner through it all, as proud of her accomplishments as she was of his. Their love deepened with each passing year, weathering the storms of life with the resilience they had both cultivated long before they met. And Thomas, the shy boy who had once asked if she had any books, grew into a thoughtful young man who combined his father's strength with Zara's love of learning. He never distinguished between his birth mother and the woman who had raised him since he was 5, referring to them both simply as my mothers when speaking of his past. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching their grandchildren play in the same fields where Thomas had once run with Sheriff, Isaac took Zara's hand, his touch still sending the same thrill through her after all these years. "Do you ever think about how differently our lives might have turned out?" he asked, the silver now dominant in his once copper hair catching the late afternoon sun. Zara smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Sometimes. If you hadn't come to Silver Creek, if I hadn't offered you a room. If the town hadn't mocked you for being alone," Isaac added softly. "Their cruelty led me to my greatest happiness," Zara mused. "There's a lesson in that, I suppose." Isaac pressed a kiss to her temple. "The lesson is that you were always stronger than they knew. Strong enough to stand alone when necessary, and brave enough to open your heart when the right person came along." "The right people," Zara corrected, watching as Thomas swung his youngest sister in a circle while their other children chased the newest generation of ranch dogs. "You and Thomas saved me from a life half-lived, and you gave us a home when we needed it most." Isaac's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Some might call it chance, but I've always believed it was something more." Zara turned her face up to his, seeing in his eyes the same love that had captured her heart 2 decades earlier. "Whatever brought us together, I'm grateful for every day we've had, and for every day to come." Their kiss, witnessed by their children and grandchildren, elicited good-natured groans and giggles. But neither Zara nor Isaac paid any mind to their audience. They had spent 20 years demonstrating that true love was worth every risk, every challenge, and every moment of vulnerability it required. In the end, the woman who had once been mocked for being alone had found not just companionship, but a rich tapestry of connections that spanned generations. And the cowboy who had married her, making her a mother to his son, had given her the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that independence and love were not opposing forces but complementary strengths, each made more powerful by the presence of the other. Together, they had written a story far more meaningful than either could have created alone. And in the golden light of their anniversary, surrounded by the family they had built, that story continued to unfold with every heartbeat, every shared glance, and every moment of the future that stretched before them, a future as vast and promising as the western sky above their home.